Alright everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I pose you with a question. If Hollyoaks could only afford to do one or the other, which one would you want to see most? And now I'm going to give you 3 options that I want you to all tell me in the comment section down below. So option number 1, go back to 5 days a week. Obviously, if you don't know what this was when in the time jump they decided to slash 2 of the episodes and make the episodes marginally shorter. So instead of 27-minute episodes, maybe even 30 minutes a week, you would get 3 20-minute episodes a week, and that is, 1.5 minutes is like introductions. So this would basically return it to the status quo and bring it back to where a lot of people want it to be, the soft spot, because I'd argue that one of the not so savory bits about this current version of Hollyoaks is Hollyoaks was always known for its kind of like prolific pace and how fast it would go, but at the same time, unfortunately, with the time jump and the less time that you have, you've generally slowed down the pace, and it's no longer like other soaps on hallucinogenic drugs. Option number 2, have a legendary 30th anniversary month. Or number 3, a Hollyoaks later renewal. Okay, so option 2 is have a legendary 30th anniversary month. Obviously, the 30th anniversary is coming up in October, and this is supposed to be the celebration of all things Hollyoaks. We've already had Hannah Cheers talking about very publicly about how this is going to be a celebration of, the origin story, the history. Titans are going to clash, and everybody's going to really kind of, everybody's going to be blown away. It's going to be must-see TV, and it's going to be a really big deal where, the main characters of the previous years, the main characters of these new years, they're going to become a huge focal point. And they brought back Claire Devine to bring back a bit of that, former Hollyoaks edge. They've kind of tipped Jeremy Blake to be a new serial killer, and they characterized it as they would make Silas Blissett look like Tom Cunningham. A Sienna and Cleo pregnancy, a Steve and Lucas domestic abuse storyline, a very deadly seeming village for this year so far. So a legendary 30th anniversary month, which would hopefully mean that they would get back on track. Hollyoaks would see a boost in ratings, and everybody would actually start to realize we need to get behind Hollyoaks, otherwise we could be slightly worried about the future for it under Channel 4. And I suppose the month comes into it, where obviously Hannah Cheers was talking about a really big deal about it being a really kind of big celebration of the month, because ultimately 1 week's worth of episodes just isn't going to be enough to commemorate a whole 30 years worth of history. So by doing that, I think that's a really good idea. And I mean, if they take anything from EastEnders' 40th anniversary, you do realize that having a big anniversary week can really kind of reshuffle, get people interested again, and it's just your job to make people want to see it. I know it's kind of up struggle street considering they have really struggled to keep a lot of the icons. They still have Sienna, Mercedes, Steve, Tony, Darren, Nancy, all of these sorts of characters who are very important to the show and a pillar of it, but also you do kind of need the people who would bring people in. Let's say, imagine they brought in Brendan Brady, for example, I mean, Emmett J. Scanlan never seems like he would return, but also still has kind of kept his footing. He showed up at the Soap Awards, maybe he could have been convinced. He's also had much of a raised profile as of late as well, where he genuinely has kind of proven that he is actually a talented actor. He did Mobland, did a bunch of the other stuff that kind of... Is that camera focused? Yeah. He did Mobland, he did a bunch of other stuff. He really has kind of... He's had a career renaissance, nearly 11 years on. So maybe a really big favour to bring back Brendan Brady for just a week. Just to see what would happen. Alternatively, you could go... the one thing I still think is an important piece and something they should do, and it obviously involves the tragic passing of Diane Langton, who played Nana McQueen. I think one thing that would be a really good idea for the 30th anniversary is you make a bit of the 30th anniversary about how Nana McQueen dies off screen and all of the McQueens gather. You get as many McQueens as who will say yes. Maybe even bring back Jackie. You get as many McQueens as you humanly can, and you bring them all back to have one McQueen funeral for Nana. You know, Reenie, bollocks, I'm forgetting the name. The one who showed up in Emmerdale, who was with Lockie. I would say Celine, but isn't Celine dead? You know, you bring back all of the McQueens you humanly can to have a big celebration of Nana McQueen and a big celebration and a way for the Hollyoaks fans to mourn the loss of Diane Langton. I think that would be a really good idea for the 30th anniversary of Hollyoaks, personally. And, you know, it's supposed to be a big celebration, right? It's supposed to be a really, really big celebration. And I think it'll be a really, really strong one to do. And then the final option is Hollyoaks Later. Now, if you don't know what Hollyoaks Later is a way to basically play Hollyoaks after the watershed, because Hollyoaks was always on at, 6:30, 6, which obviously in the UK, it's before the watershed, which is where you can't really do a lot of the darker stuff as such. They still did, but you have to have it be a little bit more tame. Hollyoaks Later was a lot more serious in the substance, like a mini series where it'd be focused on one angle. Obviously the one that's most famous is the one where I'm forgetting the names. It's where the parachute gets changed and one character comes crashing to death. What even am I going for here? You had one where obviously Brady McQueen was killed by Silver with knitting needles to the head. You had one where the teens go to a festival and we see that the festival has a drug dealer, and it also has, a woman who is basically used as a sex object, a bargaining chip, and it's a really bleak one. You have kind of like the Irish one where you have Mercedes and you have the Irish guys that I don't remember the name of. Hollyoaks Later was a really cool spin-off where you got to do a little bit more 18 age, a little more X-rated, something a little bit more ballsy around soap, and while still kind of keeping the characters, whilst having a bit more adult material. I do like Hollyoaks Later. I do think it was a really cool thing that they did. It did make Hollyoaks stand out as such because they got to have much more serious topic matter rather than just kind of sticking to the same format. I think Hollyoaks Later is a really cool thing, and I would be very willing to see it get renewed if they actually had the right story for it, for example. But I don't know. I think all options are really quite strong. I still think, obviously, and I suppose the poll closed with 97 votes. So the option 1, which won, is go back to 5 days a week. Option 2, which came second, or the one that came second is Hollyoaks Later renewed, and with 8 votes, the third one is have a legendary 3rd anniversary month, which kind of shows you where a lot of the Hollyoaks fans' ideas are. We would simply rather there be more Hollyoaks, because then we could get back to the same pacing and get back to the same stories and actually be able to develop and trust and show just what it's capable of. But unfortunately, the lack of time kind of keeps it all in like a weird echo chamber where not some stuff really advances really quick, but other things take ages. I simply think that's the best possible option, and I do miss when Hollyoaks did do 5 episodes a week. It was always so exhilarating if you were behind on Hollyoaks and you did manage to get the time to catch up and fully get through it, and it's like, I have 20 episodes to watch, and you're like, yes, lock me in, so much is going to happen. I do miss having that, just so much more of it. And obviously, You could just do 4 episodes a week and you could have 20 more minutes, which I think would be a decent upgrade. But fundamentally, I think if I were to choose one, it is just to go back to 5 days a week, because otherwise, it feels like we miss out on so much. So here we are, Hannah. Cheers. If you can afford it, go back to 5 days a week or 4 days a week, please. Because it's not like the Hollyoaks audience is dying off. There is still a very rich Hollyoaks audience out there, and I do think they've done a good job of rebuilding the socials and becoming a lot more present online. I just think that there's only so much you can do, there's only so much hype you can build for it, especially considering it's still very niche and you have to be aware of these new characters, while still having the soap fans of previous years not really knowing who these new characters would be, what they are doing, or why. So I think it would be a really good way to kind of bridge the gap between the old and the new, and still put out more content out there, because we all necessarily want more soap out there, unless your name's Coronation Street, when I'm happy that you've taken 30 minutes away from it. So there we are. So once again, if Hollyoaks could only afford to do one or the other, which would you see most? 5 days a week, 30th anniversary Legendary Month, or Hollyoaks later renewed, good lord. I think I've done a pretty good account for it. I obviously want to know your options or questions in the comment section down below. I've been Ash from Watching Walford. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.